Every empire believes it will last forever, until the final years, when suddenly everything that once felt stable begins to crack at the edges. History shows that empires don't fall randomly, and they don't fall all at once. They fall in a predictable pattern, a 7-stage sequence that has repeated for thousands of years across dozens of civilizations: Rome, the Ottomans, the British Empire, the Soviet Union, and now, according to the data, the United States. Collapse is not an accident. Collapse is a process. And once a nation reaches stage 5, history says the final 2 stages follow faster than anyone expects. To understand where America stands today, we must understand the pattern itself, a pattern discovered by historians, economists, and military strategists who studied the rise and fall of world powers across 3,000 years. And what they found is chilling. Every empire collapses in the same 7 stages. Every empire, without exception. The first stage is the age of pioneers, when a new nation is young, hungry, disciplined, and driven by ambition rather than complacency. For America, this was the 1700s and early 1800s. Expansion, innovation, rapid population growth, and enormous opportunity. The country was building, producing, creating. It was a society defined by hard work and self-reliance. The second stage is the age of commerce. This is when trade explodes, industries emerge, and the nation becomes wealthy. For America, this was the late 1800s and early 1900s. Steel, railroads, oil, factories. Immigration surged, cities grew, and America transformed into an industrial superpower. The third stage is the age of affluence. This is when wealth reaches its peak. Standards of living surge. Technology accelerates. The middle class becomes the backbone of the nation. America lived this era from the 1950s to the early 2000s. The post-war boom, the internet revolution, global dominance, low debt, low inflation, rising wages. This was the golden era. But affluence always leads to the fourth stage, the age of decadence, a period of rising debt, declining productivity, political division, and cultural complacency. This is when nations stop building and start consuming, when they stop innovating and start borrowing, when discipline fades and entitlement grows. This is where the United States spent the past 20 years. Debt exploded, infrastructure decayed, manufacturing fled, political unity shattered, social trust collapsed, the middle class shrank, and the country began losing the qualities that made it powerful. Decadence is dangerous because it triggers stage 5, and stage 5 is where collapse becomes visible. Stage 5, the age of division. America's current phase. Stage 5 is the moment when a nation becomes internally hostile, when citizens stop viewing each other as fellow countrymen and begin viewing each other as enemies. It's when political parties stop compromising, when institutions lose legitimacy, when corruption becomes normalized, when the judiciary becomes politicized, when tribes form, when information becomes propaganda, when elections are disputed, when half the country believes the system is rigged, and the other half believes the opposite. This is not normal political disagreement. This is structural fragmentation. America today is living this stage with mathematical precision. Trust in Congress is at historic lows. Trust in the Supreme Court is collapsing. 50% of Americans believe elections are illegitimate. 70% believe the media lies. 80% believe the country is on the wrong track. Both major parties believe the other is a threat to democracy. This level of division only appears in late-stage empires. Rome had it in its final century, when senators fought each other in the streets. The Ottomans had it when corrupt officials battled reformists. The Soviets had it in the 1980s, when the public lost faith in the communist system. Britain had it after World War II, when economic collapse created political chaos. Division is a sign of decay, not strength. And once stage 5 appears, history says stages 6 and 7 follow fast, sometimes in as little as a decade. But before we get there, let's finish the full pattern. Stage 1. The Age of Pioneers, Birth of Strength. In this phase, nations operate with discipline and purpose. Leaders are competent because incompetence means death. Corruption is low because the system is new. Citizens work hard because survival depends on it. Every great power begins this way. This is the hungry phase, when ambition is high and entitlement is zero. For the US, this was the revolution, the frontier era, the Industrial Revolution, a nation fueled by innovation and sacrifice. Stage 2, the Age of Commerce, expansion of wealth. Trade expands, cities grow, technology surges, infrastructure appears, education rises, immigration increases, the nation starts shaping the global economy. This phase is driven by opportunity, not ideology. In the US, this was the late 1800s. Steel barons, railroads, oil magnates, entrepreneurship, invention, skyscrapers, mass manufacturing. Stage 3, the Age of Affluence, peak power. Wealth becomes overwhelming. Middle-class prosperity rises. Military strength reaches global dominance. The nation becomes the world leader in technology, trade, and culture. America lived this phase from the 1950s to early 2000s. The dollar became the reserve currency, the U.S. built global alliances, and American culture spread everywhere. But affluence is always temporary, because affluence creates entitlement, and entitlement leads to decline. Stage 4, the Age of Decadence, the hidden decline. This is the most dangerous stage because it feels comfortable, even as collapse begins. Key indicators: massive debt growth, weakening education, declining birth rates, political corruption, moral exhaustion, elitism rising, citizens demanding benefits without productivity, government printing money to avoid responsibility, division growing quietly under the surface. Rome lived this stage for 200 years. America lived it from 2001 to 2020. But then Stage 5 arrived, loudly. Stage 5, the Age of Division, the point of no return. This is where the U.S. is right now. Stage 5 is defined by tribal politics, collapsing social trust, contested elections, media propaganda, extremist movements, cultural conflict, loss of national identity, anger, resentment, fear. When a nation reaches Stage 5, collapse becomes self-reinforcing. People stop cooperating, parties stop compromising, leaders stop solving problems, institutions stop functioning, and the population begins turning against itself. Rome reached this stage when senators assassinated Julius Caesar. The Soviets reached it when citizens lost faith in communism. Britain reached it when the empire ran out of money. And America reached it when trust became a memory rather than a reality. Stage 5 is not collapse, but it is the final warning. When a nation enters Stage 5, the Age of Division, the final two stages arrive faster than anyone expects. Not because collapse suddenly appears out of nowhere, but because Stage 5 destroys the one thing an empire needs more than money, more than armies, more than technology: trust. When trust dies, collapse becomes inevitable, and history shows that once Stage 5 locks in, empires rarely survive another 30 years. Rome didn't. The Soviets didn't. The Ottomans didn't. The British Empire didn't. Stage 5 is the breaking point. Stage 6 is the fall. Let's go through it. Stage 6, the Age of Crisis, the shock that breaks the system. Every empire in history faced the same pattern, a period of massive internal division. Stage 5, followed by a sudden, electrifying event that pushes the system over the edge. Historians call it the triggering crisis, the spark that ignites the explosion. Rome's trigger was the economic collapse of the 3rd century, followed by barbarian invasions. The Soviet Union's trigger was the collapse of oil prices and nationalist uprisings. Britain's trigger was World War II and bankruptcy. The French monarchy's trigger was a catastrophic fiscal crisis and mass hunger. For the United States, historians debate what the exact trigger will be, but they all agree on something terrifying. The U.S. is surrounded by potential stage 6 triggers simultaneously. Any one of them can detonate the system. 1. A major economic crisis, a stock market collapse worse than 2008, a dollar crisis, a treasury bond failure, an inflation spike, mass unemployment. Economic panic is one of the fastest accelerators of stage 6. 2. A political legitimacy crisis, a contested election, a constitutional crisis, a candidate refusing to concede, widespread claims of fraud on either side. This already happened in 2020 and 2024. The next time could be uncontrollable. 3. A major social unrest event, a viral police incident, a political assassination, a nationwide protest turning violent, a breakdown of law and order. Historically, this is how civil conflicts begin. 4. A geopolitical shock, a war with China, a conflict in Taiwan, a Middle East crisis, a cyber attack on U.S. infrastructure, a failed military engagement. Empires collapse when they can no longer manage foreign commitments. 5. A fiscal collapse. The U.S. national debt is over $36 trillion. Interest payments are near $1 trillion per year. If the bond market breaks, the government itself becomes insolvent. This is the exact scenario that destroyed the British Empire after World War II. Why stage 6 happened so fast? In stage 5, society is already fractured. People no longer trust the government, the elections, the media, the economy, the justice system, each other. So when a shock hits, the system cannot absorb it. In a healthy society, crises unify people. In a divided society, crises tear them apart. This is why the Soviet Union collapsed in 900 days after stage 6 began. It looked strong: nuclear weapons, global influence, millions of soldiers. But internally, it was hollow. America today shows similar signs. Half the country believes democracy is failing. Millions believe civil war is possible. Institutions are losing legitimacy. Extremism rising on both sides. The middle class shrinking. Political hatred overwhelming moderation. These are classic stage 5, stage 6 transition markers. Stage 6 is not collapse itself. Stage 6 is the moment when collapse becomes unstoppable. And then comes stage 7. Stage 7, the age of collapse. The system breaks down completely. Stage 7 is the final phase. It is when the empire that once felt permanent suddenly disintegrates. Politically, economically, socially. Historians identify 3 markers of stage 7. Marker 1, breakdown of central authority. The federal government becomes unable to enforce laws or maintain control. This can take several forms. States refusing federal orders, police departments overwhelmed or fractured, military leadership divided, mass non-compliance with federal mandates. Parallel institutions forming Rome experienced this when generals stopped obeying emperors. The Soviet Union experienced it when republics declared independence. The U.S. could experience it through state-federal conflict, something already visible today in border disputes, immigration fights, and state-level defiance. Marker 2, economic disintegration. When trust in government collapses, the economy collapses with it. Stage 7 includes currency losing value, inflation or hyperinflation, supply chain breakdown, shortages of food, fuel, and essentials, bank failures, mass unemployment, collapse of the dollar's global role. In Weimar Germany, hyperinflation destroyed the republic. In Rome, currency debasement collapsed commerce. In the Soviet Union, people stood in bread lines as the economy froze. The U.S. economy today is deeply fragile. Record debt, dependence on foreign supply chains, hollowed-out manufacturing, and a financial system addicted to money printing. A stage 7 economic collapse would be devastating. social fragmentation and violence, stage 7 is when society stops functioning. Violence between political groups, urban unrest, collapse of public trust, rise of militias, fragmentation of national identity. Mass migration within the country. People fleeing cities. Rome's collapse saw massive migrations and local warlords. The Soviet collapse saw ethnic conflicts and regional power struggles. In the U.S., existing polarization makes this incredibly dangerous. A stage 7. America would not look like one unified collapse. It would look like multiple regional crises happening simultaneously. What comes after collapse? Every empire that collapsed followed one of 3 outcomes. Outcome 1. A new authoritarian system. Rome got emperors. France got Napoleon. Russia got the Soviet Union. People trade freedom for stability. Outcome 2. Fragmentation. The Soviet Union split into 15 nations. The Roman Empire split into East and West. Large empires rarely stay united after collapse. Outcome 3. Foreign spheres of influence. A weakened nation becomes dependent on stronger powers. After Britain collapsed, the U.S. replaced it as global hegemon. If the U.S. collapses, the next hegemon could be China, a BRICS bloc system, a multi-currency global order. America would no longer shape the world. The world would shape America. Where the U.S. stands today, based on indicators used by historians, economists, intelligence agencies, military analysts, political scientists, the United States is currently in Stage 5, division moving rapidly towards Stage 6, crisis. The exact timeline is uncertain, but patterns suggest Stage 6 could begin within 5 to 15 years. Stage 7 could follow within a decade after that. Or a major shock could accelerate everything. No empire has reversed after reaching Stage 5. Not one. The final warning. The 7 stages of collapse are not a prophecy. They are a pattern, a mathematical sequence rooted in human behavior, economics, and political reality. The U.S. is not doomed because it is America. It is doomed because it is following the same path every empire followed before collapse. And once Stage 5 begins, the next chapters are already written.